Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Today is a very special day. It's January 3rd, 2020. Not only is it a new decade, a decade that's going to bring a lot of interesting things to the world, it's also the 11th birthday of Bitcoin. It came out on January 3rd of 2009 to the general public. And boy, it was one hell of a decade, and I'm very excited about the upcoming decade. Bitcoin will always be very special to me. It was my introduction to the world of global finance. It was my introduction to a lot of wonderful problems to think about, like remittances and microfinance. And a small ragtag group of people not too long ago changed not only my world, but a lot of other people's lives, changed the whole world. We now have a global movement. Millions of people every day wake up thinking about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. Hundreds, if not thousands, of academic papers have been written, and we've seen just a profound influence. The G20 and the G7 have both talked about it. Global regulations are starting to change, and every central bank in the world is aware of cryptocurrencies, and some are even taking positions in cryptocurrencies. There's really never been a time in human history where one piece of technology has obtained such enormous global relevance without any central coordinated effort, any central coordinated marketing. No company controls it, and the revolution's just getting started. So first off, happy birthday, Bitcoin. It's been a hell of a ride, and I look forward to the next 10 years to see where this takes all of us. Also, welcome to the new decade. 2010 to 2019 was pretty crazy, and now we're in 2020. And 2020 to 2029 is going to be very interesting. This is the decade where we're probably going to have the first brain-computer interface consumer devices be implanted into people. For example, the neural lace. This is the decade where we're going to see private space travel really take off. This is the decade that VR and AR are going to go from fun things to mainstream things. We'll probably have glasses by the end of the 2020s that you can put on that have augmented reality built in. Cell phone technology is going to go through several more doublings. We're going to see the proliferation of electric vehicles this decade. Tesla really proved out the model. Every manufacturer is going to have it, and battery technology is only going to get better. We'll probably see the density double or quadruple this decade. So we'll have cars that can go 600 miles to 1,200 miles on a single charge and charge very quickly. We're going to see a huge proliferation in alternative energy. So we'll probably see the global solar capacity double to quadruple, if not larger. The same for wind. We're going to see a lot of great storage solutions come online. We're going to see all kinds of new propulsion systems come online. Physics is advancing at an amazing pace. I just read recently that quantum teleportation just happened between two chips. So that's going to be really exciting to see where that goes. This is probably also going to be the decade that quantum computers go to full mainstream viability, and the commercialization of that technology is coming soon. This is going to be the decade that 5G gets fully proliferated across the entire world, really changing a lot of things in the wireless world and spectrum. Things like Wi-Fi 6 are only going to evolve. Bluetooth is only going to evolve. So V2V and V2I, self-driving cars and intelligent infrastructure is really going to make its way through. So this is going to be an amazing 10 years, and it's going to change a lot of things. And the consequences of this technology will reach its way to every government service, to democracy itself. We'll probably see another economic collapse similar to 2008 sometime during this decade. And I think that means it's a great opening for cryptocurrencies to be ready to start taking over the global economy. So I'm really excited to see what happens. This is probably the decade that we're going to see one or more African nations enter the League of Nations and be of the same economic prominence as countries like Brazil and South Korea. It could be Kenya, it could be Ethiopia, it could be Nigeria, but it's going to be really exciting to see that happen. This is the decade also that we're probably going to see all kinds of new innovations on the movement of people, and from dealing with diaspora to new passport systems to new identity systems. This could be the decade that we have self-sovereign identity really take prominence and hold. This is also the decade that data is going to start being treated as it is, as a commodity, and new rules and regulations are going to start materializing, and the whole data surveillance of capitalism and economy that was developed over the last 20 years will start being reined in through regulation, perhaps global regulation. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy 10 years. And it's the privilege of a lifetime to be alive right now to actually see these things, whether it be in the biotechnology spectrum, the nanotechnology spectrum, the ICT world, or otherwise, actually work their way to mainstream. It's also a privilege to start seeing a lot of things change. This is the last decade of traditional organized media, in my view. We're probably going to have less CNNs and Fox Newses and Bloombergs and Wall Street Journals and more Joe Rogans, especially as we enter the 2025s and beyond. And I think our space in particular is going to fundamentally change the incentives of journalism. And we'll actually move to a different way of paying for content, curating content. And the age of the long form, the long tail is about to begin. So it's going to be very exciting to see that occur. Also the continued adoption of open ideas, open technology, and idea flow. Every Fortune 500 company has a dense portfolio of open source technology. This was not the case in 2000, and less the case, and a little bit more the case, I should say, in 2010. But now as we enter 2020, heading to 2030, it's going to be pretty exciting to see how quickly people are collaborating and how products are being built from common DNA across the industry. It's just good for you, the consumer. It's good for all of us. So anyway, where does Cardano fit into all of this? This is hopefully our decade. Bitcoin owned the last one, and I hope by the end of the 2020s, Cardano will be the most predominant force in the cryptocurrency space and become a true social operating system. And my hope is that we can see thousands of meta tokens living on our platform, from securities to commodities to stable coins to all kinds of representations of value. We can see billions of transactions every single day, over 1 billion users in this platform. And really it all comes down to, can the technology properly meet the right incentive set and have the right commercial utilization? These are the three things that have to be put together. We are at IOHK obsessed with getting the technology right. We think we have the right paradigm. The peer review process has given us unparalleled clarity on understanding trade-offs and understanding where this can go, and has allowed us to talk to everybody in the world with a common language about what we can do. And we've mastered everything from VDFs to VRFs. We've mastered everything from consensus protocols to the underlying cryptographic primitives. And we have a very good understanding of what needs to be done to build a global scale system and how to do that in a responsible, peer-reviewed, sustainable way. So from a technological perspective, we feel our approach is right. This year in particular, we're really going to start hitting the commercials hard. I've announced to my company that we're on a Cardano first strategy, meaning if we build a product, we always ask ourselves, can we deploy this product in Cardano? So if someone comes to us and says, hey, we'd like you to do some interesting blockchain solution, whether it be supply chain or otherwise, before we look to Atala or other things, we're going to look at Cardano first and see if we can do that. I think it's very important to dog food and to build these things properly. So hopefully the Ethiopia project will be able to launch that currency on Cardano. And it's the same for the credential verification project in Georgia and other such things. So we'll always be Cardano first, at least this year, and hopefully throughout the future. And we're going to get very aggressive about the commercialization of the technology as Shelley turns on and as Goguen turns on. We feel that this is a platform that has a right to exist. And we feel this is a platform that brings a lot to the table and allows people to solve problems in ways that they couldn't previously. So anybody who comes to us and asks for solutions, we think this is the platform for solutions to exist. And of course, we'll push that mentality with our partners, Emergo and the foundation, and we're really excited to see where that's going to go. In terms of incentives, we look at tokenomics and incentive schemes, governance systems as first-class citizens to the growth of a product. The reason why Bitcoin was so successful was that in the simplicity of the incentives model that Satoshi created, it created an incentive for people to mine it. Similarly, if we're to be successful, we need incentives to participate, incentives to build, to be directly aligned with the growth of the system. So with the launch of the incentivized testnet, we're learning a lot about the business of stake pools, and we're learning a lot about the business of maintaining a cryptocurrency and creating stability there. There are already 500 stake pools that have registered, and we're learning everything about what saturation metrics should look like, to who's a good operator, who's not a good operator, and just how this marketing looks like and the user experience looks like. And so this is a topic that we're, especially this quarter, incredibly interested in, and throughout the year we'll be incredibly interested in, and invested quite a bit of time and resources at IOHK and our partners Emergo and the Cardano Foundation, investing a lot of time to make sure that we fully understand. And as we exit 2020 and we go throughout the decade, this is going to be something that we do continuous research in. And the better we get, the better the feedback loop becomes, the faster we can grow and get to those billion users and become a true social operating system that's beneficial to everyone in the world. So commercialization, technology, and incentives are the three things that need to be aligned for us to achieve that coveted #1 spot and to displace Bitcoin and become the platform that people want to build their dApps on and become the platform that people want to store value on. We built Cardano for a reason. It was not an academic project. It's a commercial project, and we want to see it grow. So this is going to be a really exciting time. But we have to remember where we came from, and we came from Bitcoin. And Bitcoin will always be around, and it's always going to be a valuable project. And it's always something that will have a soft spot in my heart. So, and on behalf of the Cardano community, happy birthday, Bitcoin. Thank you so much for all you've done, and we wish you well. And to everybody in the Bitcoin ecosystem, we wish you great success, and we hope that you continue to grow and to stay stable and continue to innovate. There's a lot of really exciting things in the Bitcoin ecosystem, from Lightning and otherwise, that we can learn from and potentially benefit from. And Bitcoin has created liquidity for cryptocurrencies everywhere, and it seems to be an accepted standard that governments are okay with, meaning it is the gateway drug to our industry, and will probably maintain that role for the foreseeable future. So it's very important that we continue to collaborate where we can, and at the very least, wish everybody well. As an industry as a whole, a great maturing is happening this decade. Crypto winter has had a positive effect in that it's starting to drive out the easy money people and the fast and loose people, and it's shaking out the bad and leaving the good. So there's a lot of great projects out there to collaborate with, work with, learn from, and build with. And one thing that we're going to be focusing a lot this year is collaboration, and to learn from other people, work with people, whether that be through standards groups like Hyperledger and the W3C, or that be through direct relationships with other cryptocurrency projects. For example, Horizon's one we've always had a great relationship with, but there are many more that I think we could reach out to and build great relationships with. So we're extremely excited to see what we can do and how we can collaborate through the foreseeable future and the years to come. And we think that we all have something to gain from talking to each other and knowing each other and being friends with each other, as opposed to competitors. We all too often look at this industry as a sum-zero industry, and the reality is that we either succeed together or we fail together. But there's no such thing as just one crypto project winning. There's too many people involved, too many cultures, too many languages, too much money, too much value to quantify for strictly one blockchain to rule them all. Instead, it's going to be an internet of blockchains, an internet of value. And the most important thing is we can collaborate in ways that produce value for everybody, namely you, the customer. So we're very excited about that. So this is going to be a hard year, a lot of things coming. This month alone, we have a lot of releases coming. Likely we're going to get Adrestia, the Haskell wallet backend, linked with the Byron reboot node, and get out the OBFT fork and that out in January, certainly February, if not January. The Haskell Shelley testnet's coming soon. We'll announce that when we get a little closer to it. And then, of course, the Shelley mainnet. So that's something that's coming soon. And then immediately thereafter, we have to be talking about Goguen. We already are. And I'm starting to dial up the heat on the Plutus team to make it easier for people to start writing Daps in Plutus. And so in anticipation for these Daps to be ported from the mock chain interface that they've constructed to run on Cardano itself. This is a high priority. We have to get smart contracts into our system. We need to get them in. And we're going to beat that drum as loud as we can, because we honestly believe Marlowe Plutus and the model we've chosen is much more viable and sustainable and frankly much superior to the EVM model. That said, we will also have an interoperability strategy for Ethereum, and we will announce that at a later date, but it is something that will happen this year. The Basha work is going well. Simulations are underway. We're making progress with Hydra, and that's going to be a very exciting thing. But this is also the year of the recursive snark, and that's going to change the entire playing ground, because you can achieve occlusive accountability as a property without having the full blockchain. So my congratulations and thanks to the Electric Coin Company and their amazing work with Halo. But that is just the beginning of a long road that will increasingly get more sophisticated for the concepts of outsourceable computation and privacy. And it's something that every cryptocurrency project, if it wants to maintain viability, must adopt at some point in the future. We already have a dedicated team that does nothing but implement snarks, and we've been working diligently for almost a year implementing Sonic, which is a snark we created back in 2018. And based upon that knowledge, in a summit we're holding in Edinburgh at the end of this month, we're going to develop a strategy to upgrade what we've already done, learn from the other snarks that are in market and starks that are in market, and also have a strategy for how we can pull something like Halo into Cardano so we can have best-in-class like clients and do that in a responsible amount of time. We're also looking at private computation. This is a topic that we introduced through a paper called Kachina. It's already on ePrint. If you guys go and see that, if you type in Kachina private smart contracts, it should probably come up on Google. And this is just the first of many papers to come exploring that topic. And it's a very important topic for a litany of industries, whether it be health medical records, interbank settlement, or other things where privacy is a requirement by regulatory standards. So this is something that we're definitely looking into and we'll build a product for, and we'll make that announcement at a later date. In addition to all of this, we're still super interested in interoperability, and we've made great progress with the NIPA POWs, from the optimization of them to making them practical. We've made great progress with proof-of-stake sidechains. We're even looking at recursive snark-based sidechains. We have a paper that we've built internally called Lattice in collaboration with the Horizon project. We'll make an announcement at a later date about when and where we'll do something like that. But overall, it's really exciting to see that people are having real legitimate conversations about how do we get blockchains to talk to each other, move information, value, and identity between these systems and allow you to interact with assets from systems that aren't your own. And whether Bitcoin chooses to participate directly or not, it's being dragged in through layer 2 solutions. And so there's definitely bridges being constructed. And we're really excited to see where that can go. And it's something that is going to be necessary for us to get to 1 billion people. So it is a first-class citizen. What's been most humbling since the launch of the incentivized testnet has been the participation of our community in the success of our product. We did not expect to see as many stake pools as we saw. We did not expect to see as much feedback as we've gotten. And that's just a testimony to the loyalty, the pride, and overall excitement that the Cardano community has for what we're building. And if this is the beginning, I'm very excited to see where this is going to go. Because at the end of the day, I think that we can build an entire revolution with what we have. You don't need a lot of people. I remember back in 2007, joining the Ron Paul campaign, there were only a few thousand people floating around the entire country who were volunteering or working, and very few people had ever even heard of them. By the time I left in 2008, there were over 2 million people floating around in the Campaign for Liberty and other Ron Paul associated movements. So to go from 5,000 to 2 million in a year's time shows you how quickly you can grow. And I see the same elements, I see the same passion, enthusiasm, incitement, and simplicity with our people that I saw with the Ron Paul movement. So I think that bodes very well for virality and our ability to grow and what we can achieve. It's amazing to see everything from the old to the young. It's amazing to see high school students come down from central Wyoming and be able to set up a stake pool using a Raspberry Pi, all the way to retired doctors in Miami, be able to talk about what we're doing. To unify that many people in one tent with one message, it's humbling and it's exciting. So this is a great year of focus. It's a year of commercialization. It's a year of very disciplined development, and it's a year where we actually start becoming our own. And so thank you all for what you've done, and I look really forward to working with you and building with you. Okay, so that's our brief update. The product managers are going to start updating you guys regularly. My hope is this month, if not this month, then next month, but every month thereafter. Aparna Ju, the senior product manager behind Cardano, the person in charge of Cardano, she and her product managers will be giving you guys regular updates and basically saying, what did we accomplish this month? What did we learn? What are we doing? What metrics are we using? What are our KPIs? Et cetera, et cetera. And they'll be doing that in conjunction with the Cardano Foundation, and if Emergo chooses to participate them as well. This is an accountability metric, but more importantly, it's also a metric so that we can demonstrate what responsible leadership looks like, and ensure that every month there's something there for you guys to see and review and understand. There's been amazing progress over the last 12 months for Cardano. And all too often I see on Twitter, Reddit, and other channels, people just ignoring that or pretending it doesn't exist or just not aware of it. And they just beat the old reliable drum of scam coin, just a wallet, nothing there, just a test net, not a real product. And that's a blatant insult to the people who wake up every day, over 100 at our company, to really want this product to be successful and want to see this become a billion-person ecosystem. So the burden is upon us to be better at marketing. This is also the month that McCann should deliver the first brand proposal for the brand refresh of Cardano. And we'll work very closely with them, the foundation, and other key stakeholders to ensure that that gets done and pushed out. I've also sent a formal request to the Cardano Foundation's board to have a clear, concise Africa strategy and Japan strategy. Japan to get liquidity and unlock and open up that market. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And in Africa, to have a 52-country strategy, be represented in every country in Africa, and make sure that we have a proper presence there and that real solutions are working their way into the marketplace. And especially after Gogan launches, it's incredibly important. I'll do my part. I'll go to Africa, I'll go to South Africa, I'll go to Uganda, I'll go to Rwanda and many other places, meet with a lot of their leadership. But there's only so much I can do. We need boots on the ground, and more importantly, we need products on the ground. So it's very important that Emergo and the foundation invest heavily in that continent, get things going, and we'll open as many doors as we can for them. Okay. So let's get to your questions. And let's see if they're good ones. They always are. All right, this one comes from Mine Analyzer. He says, will we have nodes, pools, and passive wallets using the Haskell code on testnet? Will there be another snapshot? Will the pledge system with rewards be implemented on testnet? So the reward scheme as specified in the formal specification will be implemented in the Haskell node. So the Haskell node has to follow the formal specification. In many cases, the executable spec is the implementation for the Haskell node, especially on the ledger rules. So whatever the formal spec says for incentives will be followed in the Haskell side. This was not the case for the Rust side. It was inspired by, but we gave the Rust team for the freedom to diverge in cases where they felt that they could bring something to market faster. Because our priority with the incentivized testnet was to create a collection of stake pools, and those operators, they're willing to work with us. So whether they're using Rust infrastructure or Haskell infrastructure, if they have to modify a script for one versus the other, just the fact that they're staking, they're building commercial relationships, and they're being delegated to was more important, because we wanted to understand first how many people would like to stake. We wanted to understand if our GUI was right, and we also wanted to understand who wanted to be involved on the stake pool side. So the point there was get it to market as quickly as possible so that we could see those metrics and work with that community and follow them along. And then when Haskell's ready, have that be a faithful representation of all of the science and the formal methodologies that we had chosen to follow. So this two-stage approach meant that we had the benefit of agility, but then the benefit of a rigorous development approach. Also, if things needed to be changed or we decided to get new business or technical requirements, we would then have a canary in that coal mine so that we could pivot some of the Haskell designs and specification designs to reflect those lessons that we'd learned from the launch of the incentivized testnet. Now, the question of will we do another snapshot, that's still open. So likely not, but it does depend upon the latency between the launch of the Haskell Shelley testnet and when we launch mainnet. If that's going to be a short time period, then we will not do another snapshot. If that's going to be a slightly longer time period because of some scope increase, then we will do a secondary snapshot. But there's a lot of discussions there. That said, we are creating a unified approach to how things are going to get listed on exchanges with the Addrestia program. And we are also creating a lot of infrastructure for stake pool operators. And so we're learning as we go, and a lot of that's going to be ported over. Are you aware of the Enigma project of secret contracts? Yes, they use multi-party computation. You once mentioned that Cardano might include such a feature in the future. Yeah, and Kachina is actually the research thread that we're doing to study private computation. We also had a research thread with multi-party computation, and we published several papers along that line, including Royale and Kaleidoscope, if you're interested. And we'll probably release a product involving Kachina at some point. Charles, when Coinbase or never? You know, I really want Coinbase, and I hope soon. You know, we'll do everything in our power. Charles, you mentioned before that IOHK team is working on a project that is bigger than Cardano itself. Can you talk about this project? Cardano is big, and we work on lots of stuff. If we do another product or project, we always think about how we can cross-pollinate and maximize the benefit for everybody. And we always make sure that the products that we release do not compete with each other. It's kind of funny, especially in the world of computer hardware. Every now and then, hardware manufacturers release self-cannibalizing products. Apple even did this. For example, when they released the MacBook, they also had the MacBook Air. So they had the MacBook Pro that was clearly different than MacBook Air, so they didn't compete for the same customer segments. But MacBook and MacBook Air did. So why would you buy an Air over a MacBook or vice versa? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So you never want to be in a situation where one product cannibalizes sales from another product within the same company. So whatever we do, each of those product categories has to be for a very well-defined scope. So for example, Atala is a permission blockchain. And there, the client may want things like reversibility of the ledger or modifiable privacy, or they may want the ability to totally control that ledger and have it be a private consortium that controls it. For example, if you're dealing with highly regulated information like academic records or medical records, and it's a consortium that happens to be sharing that with the grace of the government, unfortunately, there's no regulatory reality where you'd be able to take something like that and put that on an open ledger, whether that be Ethereum or Cardano. So your only options are to pass on that deal or to do a permission ledger, and then hopefully somehow find a way to connect that to an open system for the movement of information and customers. So Atala doesn't cannibalize sales from Cardano. That said, there are other verticals. There's the proof of work space, there's the privacy space, there's the IoT space, there's the social media space. And each and every one of these has business and technical requirements, which may be beyond the scope of what Cardano can offer in its current iteration. And a special purpose product may make sense in that respect. And we do some things, and we'll announce those at a later date that are chasing certain verticals that Cardano can't cover right now and should not cover in the initial scope. If these happen to be open ledgers, then we'll see if we can find a mechanism that can create maximum benefit for everybody. And we'll of course make those statements. How is New Balance doing now? Any updates from that? So that was a prototype trial run that we did. It was an actual product in circulation, and people can use it today. It's still running. Based on commercial success, New Balance will decide either to scale down or scale up that relationship. So obviously we have a commercial team. It's led by Jerry. and he talks to them, and we'll negotiate and we'll announce if that's being scaled up or scaled out. That's it. Authentication, anti-counterfeiting, and loyalties are a huge industry, huge market. And what we've decided to do is put our money where our mouth is and actually create a dedicated group within IOHK to pursue that using Cardano. So we're negotiating with the University of Wyoming, a very large donation. The donation will likely involve ADA. So it'll be the first academic organization in the world to accept ADA as a donation. And we're going to set up a lab there specifically for authentication. So we'll make that announcement and the particulars behind how much and what we're doing in the scope probably this month or next month. And I'll travel to Wyoming for this ceremony once we lock all those things down. But my hope is that this trillion-dollar industry that is authentication, we can take a big chip out of it and really innovate, especially for the secondary market. It's amazing if you go to Chanel's website, they don't actually authenticate their own products. So you can have this very expensive handbag or other product, and you have no way of knowing if it's real or not if you bought it as a used good. And that's just really unfortunate as consumers. Also, nobody really wants to spend a lot of money for a watch or some other product if they don't really know if that's real or not, or there's a perception of what they have is fake. Rolex, for example, 9 out of 10 times when you see a Rolex, it's not a real Rolex. It's actually a fake Rolex. So if you're a young kid and you save up a lot of money and you work really, really hard, you finally get that Submariner, and people look at you and say, "Oh, you're too young to have that. It's probably a fake." You've lost all that brand value for that watch. So it's very important to have product solutions that allow you to authenticate things as they come. And that's a market that we think can bring a huge amount of value to Cardano and a huge amount of value to the blockchain industry in general. We're not the only one. Many people are chasing it. We think the strategies that many people have aren't as good as they need to be, and we're definitely going to have our own strategy. When instant settlement will likely come with Hydra, through one of the Hydra, and that'll be that's like fast finality is usually what people call that. You can buy barbecue with Cardano. Actually, you can. Many places that sell that. Into the Abyss is a known troll who comes into our live stream. Just ignore him. John Alora asks, has there been any discussion with IOHK about what you guys observe with network stability? With the ITN, network instability is very common at the moment. Yeah, of course it is. And as expected with a test net. We also launched right around Christmas. We had people work all the way up to Christmas Eve to get some patches out. It's going to be rough and rocky for a month or two as the Rust team works to clean up things and stabilize things. This is exactly what a testnet is supposed to do. If your expectations are for a finished product, wait till the mainnet. So we have observed a little bit of instability, especially with some issues with nodes and sockets. But we'll fix all that, and it'll get a lot more stable over time. That said, it's actually pretty stable, and it surprises me how stable the incentivized testnet is, given the age, maturity, and how rapidly we brought that to market. And the components that really need to be good and stable, the wallet backend and Daedalus, are rock solid, and those are the things that will be plugged into the Haskell node, which has a very different development methodology. Where does the ADA we are getting rewards come from? Inflation. So when we said there's only going to be X amount of ADA, well, that's over an inflation schedule. And what we did is we took from the back of that inflation schedule and we put it on the front. So instead of like Bitcoin, the last Bitcoin will be made in 2140. It's like saying take some of those Bitcoin that were going to be made in 2139 and 2140 and move them to the front for an incentivized testnet. But it's basically inflation. It's exactly the same as Bitcoin's distribution mechanism or any others. Hey, Charles, can you tell us about the Ethiopian government Cardano project? Currently, it's in the feasibility study where we're looking at regulation, we're looking at deployment, costings, partners, coalitions, and should the feasibility study come back well, then basically we'd run a pilot, and then the pilot would have win-loss We'd see what we did well, what we didn't do well, what we learned. And if the pilot looks really good, then the government will issue an RFP. We would compete with a coalition against other people to actually turn that into a real product. So it's a 3-stage process. We're in the beginning of that, which is a feasibility study with the Ministry of Innovation and Technology. And that feasibility study will probably be done this month or next month. They're moving pretty quickly. We're working with Omar Bomba and his guys. And they have a good group there. When Hydra, we're targeting Usenix for the Hydra submission. So hopefully February we can publicly publish that paper. Is there an estimated time frame for staking to be implemented into hardware wallets such as Ledger? With the latest update of the Haskell wallet backend, we should actually have Ledger support and Yoroi restoration support built into the wallet backend. So it's a question of rewriting the firmware for the Ledger devices to support cold staking. It's also a question of whether we want to do some sort of Ledger multi-sig design. And we have had some discussions about changing the underlying crypto Cardano to BLS signatures. So we have a group of people we work with who update Ledger firmware, and we're negotiating with them right now a bundled contract for a collection of features that we want. So once available, they write all this stuff, and then an update gets pushed through, and you update your firmware for your Ledger, and then suddenly it has all these new capabilities. But we'll make an announcement there. We're moving a lot faster than historically we used to. It took over a year to get Ledger support in the beginning for a variety of bad reasons. But now we're moving quickly. And generally, these things take 2 to 3 months once the negotiations are done and we go through. But I'm pretty excited that we have Ledger support with the Haskell wallet backend, which means we can now build a Ledger interface for Daedalus. So you can actually manage cold wallets using Daedalus. So we just have to get the team to do that. And that's JavaScript code, so you can write that quite quickly. All right, I'll just. Don't you think the roadmap needs to be rescheduled? Nope. Happy with the roadmap as it is. Gobin and Shelley are definitely good to go. Based on what Hydra and the de-risking looks like, I feel pretty confident for 2020. And Voltaire version 1 we can get out in 2020. So I feel pretty good. Does the Haskell node also use Poldercast as the pub sub networking layer? No. What we're probably going to do is rewrite Poldercast. So there are some known problems with Poldercast, and we wrote that in our network documentation, but we still wanted to implement it and learn from it. So there's going to be a post-mortem that we do from everything we learned from building Poldercast for the ITN. We're going to give it to Spiros, who's the original author of Poldercast, along with some more design requirements. And then what we'll do is we'll come together and develop Poldercast 2, Wrath of Polder. And that will be the official pub sub system that we pull in after we do peer-to-peer and the Delta Q stuff. Ethereum copying Cardano. Well, they're starting to talk about epics and slots. Funny, Vitalik loves going to Reddit and saying how bad we are, but then suddenly their stuff starts looking like our stuff. Okay, Mr. V. And if they can ever get Ethereum 2 out, and probably it's going to be Ethereum and Ethereum 2 living at the same time, competing with each other, like Python 2 and Python 3. It's not easy to do this stuff. Everybody can talk big, but actually launching things, building things, keeping the ecosystem together, it is so hard. You can either be like Bitcoin and move very slowly, or you're just going to have to accept you're going to leave some people behind and create fragmentation. That's why we're doing things the way we're doing. We think it's the third option, and it's much better than those two. McCann rebranding marketing starting soon. I'll get a report from McCann, a recommendation about what they should do from the Cardano Foundation. I think the first deliverable is this month. And then what we're going to do is comment on it, and we run it through an iteration until we decide it looks good. And then we'll propagate it through the foundation of Mirko IOHK and the ambassadors. Win lap dance with Chico. He'd even back out of that. Guy keeps backing out of things. It's funny. I said, let's do a boxing match. He says MMA. I say, okay, here's a promoter. No, I can't use that promoter. I have to use my guy. You know, he's a nobody. You give him a chance to actually be somebody, and he's still a nobody. It's a lesson in life. You get every now and then you get a once in a lifetime opportunity. Shut the hell up and take it. Are all the number plates made by inmates in Colorado? What do you think about this prison economy? I hate private prisons. I hate using prisoners to do labor. You should never create a perverse financial incentive to imprison people. And our society seems to be perfectly comfortable with that. 1% of the US population is in jail or has been in jail. That's just a national failure. And it's morally wrong for us to privatize prisons. It's morally wrong for us to create a business out of incarcerating people. It should be collectively painful and expensive for society to have criminal conduct so that we all have a collective incentive to prevent it. We should not create a class of society that gets rich off of the imprisonment of our people. So this is one of the great evils that must be undone once we've achieved a greater bit of clout. Hi, Charles. Greetings from Ethiopia. Well, greetings too. How can you get involved? Talk to John O'Connor. Find him on Twitter. You can find him other places. He's our director of African operations. And more importantly, he's based in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. So if you're passionate, you want to do something, reach out to him and let's see if we can make you an ambassador. I think Trump will disagree on the prison subject. You know, it's funny. We live in an age where people are so propagandized and sensitive and bipolar, that polarized, that if you say one positive thing about a particular political figure, Clinton or Trump or something, they assume you're a diehard supporter and endorse every single thing that they have stood for. And if you say one negative thing, people think that you endorse everything the opposition says, and they brutally attack you as if you're like a Clinton supporter or something. If you support Trump, for example, or you attack Trump. And the reality is, world's nuanced. And people need to start thinking in terms of philosophy, and they need to think in terms of principles, and they need to think for themselves, use critical thinking. But that's expensive and time consuming, and our society doesn't incentivize that. It incentivizes people picking a side and lobbing hand grenades at each other and having monolithic thought. I'm deeply disturbed that we seem to be on a path to war with Iran for no reason. We don't really need to go to war with them. We can fight a Cold War or a proxy war and fight them economically and fight them through wet work and fight them through back channels. We don't need to actually have a war. But you can't go and assassinate basically the second in charge of that country at an airport in Iraq and expect that there's not going to be a profound blowback from that. That's just a fact of life. If we always have to ask ourselves, if someone did that to us, what would be the consequences? If someone killed the vice president of the United States or the chief or the Joint Chiefs of Staff, chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, or the Secretary of Defense, it would be an act of war. We would already be launching missiles. And so we do this to another country and we think that somehow there's not going to be profound consequences to that. So unfortunately, we seem to lack wisdom at the moment in our foreign policy. It's schizophrenic at best, and it's leading us to a path of a major conflict at worst. We seem to lack wisdom in our economic policy as well. I can't for the life of me understand what our trade policy happens to be. I can't for the life of me understand what our European policy or Asian policy happens to be. And this is a consequence of electing someone to the White House who has no experience whatsoever running anything of prominence, and doesn't seem to want to listen to people or understand the moral responsibilities of what we have. The American country is an empire, for better or for worse. We built it after World War II. And when you become the president, you're the king of that empire for a finite period of time. And there's a fourth branch of our government, the great bureaucracy, that manages that empire. It's huge. It's vast. Millions of people who spend their careers just doing that. Again, for better or for worse. It's not an endorsement. It's not a criticism. It's just reality as it is. And so we have someone who's occupying an office, who's in a position to basically tell that empire what to do, who has never really deeply thought about the consequences of his decisions. Now, the problem is the opposition party is offering us basically unrestricted socialism. 70% tax rates, 5% wealth tax, nationalizing a sixth to half of the US economy, endorsing a meta government because of global warming that will basically mean that unelected bureaucrats somewhere in the world will have total control over the US economy. And of course, get rid of everything, get rid of our constitutional rights, et cetera, and intersectional politics, which will divide us and crack society at its core. So there's nothing viable there. So what do you choose? A petulant, belligerent king who's more of a man-child than a real person, who just thinks it's perfectly okay to just kill people at airports, not understanding the consequences of it, and can't negotiate anything, failed negotiations with North Korea, failed negotiations with China, or a party that wants to basically destroy the entire US economy. It's a bad position to be in, and it's a symptom that society is going through a great change. The reality is the US government as it is not working for us, the US people. It's not working for the world. And we're due for a change. And that's probably going to be through a constitutional convention or a civil war or something, but it's not going to be through the ballot box in a traditional sense. It's a rigged system. Gerrymandering has caused a situation where the same people, regardless of approval, get reelected over and over again, and they have lifetime appointments. The approval rating of Congress is right up there with genital herpes. It's about 8%, 10%. Not exactly the popular institution. Yet 2020 is going to come along, and come November, we're going to reelect over 90% of the incumbents. That's a fact. We're not going to see much change. Nancy Pelosi is still going to be in office. Mitch McConnell is still going to be in office. I've never heard of an institution where you have a 90% disapproval rating, but the incumbents get to keep their job. And in terms of the presidential election, we have no diversity there. At the end of the day, it's a rigged system. You don't get to pick your nominees. The party picks them. Everybody who dealt with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton back in 2016 learned that very quickly. She was coordinated instead of selected. And it's the same in the Republican Party. Every now and then we have an anomaly like Trump, but more often than not, party insiders make the decision of who gets to be picked. Bush here, McCain here, Romney here. It's pre-decided. So we will not have change, and this government will not wake up and do its job, and until we have a new way of governing. This is one of the principal reasons why I'm in the cryptocurrency space, because at the end of the day, you can either complain about it or you can offer solutions. And built in our technology is basically trust and truth engines. Record facts, record consent, build new voting systems, decide how money is going to work, get private money, get private commerce, build international trade relationships without creating a powerful central entity to govern and control you. This is as much about governance as it is about money, our space. In fact, more so. And if I can say we can rebuild the Ethiopian economy and government, and Rwanda and Uganda and South Africa, and get rid of the corruption, it works just as well in the United States as it'll work abroad. So we have every intention to bring that technology home, and it's already happening in the state of Wyoming, one of 50, which has 2 senators, same as California. And there we're starting to bring blockchain into every aspect. At some point, your driver's license in Wyoming will be connected to that. At some point, all the laws will be connected to some sort of cryptocurrency-based system. And at some point, you'll probably be able to vote online. using a blockchain. And if it works there in Wyoming, it'll work in Colorado and Nebraska, and eventually we'll get enough states. And we have this little thing in the Constitution that lets us call a constitutional convention if 2/3 of the states agree, which means we can bypass the entire federal government and rewrite the U.S. Constitution and put the federal government out of business. So I'm deeply disturbed that our foreign policy may end up killing a lot more people and creating all kinds of horrible chicanery. And I'm deeply disturbed by the way the U.S. government's operating at the moment. But we got to change it. And we're going to change it by going and changing it at the state level and changing it through innovation and technology. It's what we're going to do. And things will look different. For the presidential elections, for example, it should be the case that every state elects a delegate. And then we have runoff elections until eventually it winnows down to a set of 5 or 6 candidates. And then you create a preference ordering. Your number one choice, your number two choice. It means we'll have multiple political parties, not just 2 that can, in dark rooms, make decisions about how things run. Second, the bureaucracy needs to be destroyed and it needs to be pushed back to the states. Third, the governors need to vote on whether we have war or not. 2/3 of the governors have to decide to give the president authorization to kill people abroad or to start a war, not the federal government, because the governors are the ones who control the states and end up contributing the resources to do this. It's a balance of power between the states and the federal government, not a kingship. So things will change. In this decade, we're going to see a lot of it. And it's going to come out of the consequences of death, failure, chaos, and bad decisions. We'll have another financial collapse. It's inevitable. Negative interest rates, $23 billion national debt in the United States. Japan's debt to GDP is like 250%. This is not sustainable. China is also going to have an economic collapse. They're building ghost cities. Why do you think we have social credit? It's coming because the leaders know proactively that things aren't always going to be so good, and they're trying to build checks and balances and control mechanisms to proactively protect them when the depression comes. That is a great opportunity to have a discussion about new laws, new regulations, new forms of government, which are a bit better for everybody. They have long-term horizons instead of short-term horizons. They're more inclusive. They protect the rights of the weak. They ensure that the powerful don't co-opt us. And also they get rid of a lot of these evils that are leftovers from the 20th century, like private prisons and war on drugs and so forth. And they respect the autonomy and value of human people, of human beings. I'm off my soapbox now. Have you been following the debate between Eric Voorhees and Nick Szabo? Not going to wade into those waters. Nick is many things, but he's not delicate in his debate. And who are the 10% who approve of genital herpes? Yeah, I know, right? I see these things like only 8% of people approve of head lice. And I was like, I think that might be in the margin of error of your poll. Statistics is great, right? I knew a statistician when I was studying mathematics, and he said, Charles, 62% of all statistics are made up, and 42% of people know that. Oh, that's a great question. It says, are there any plans to make capping possible in stake pools to avoid oversaturation? This is a great example of what the ITN does. Gets us all talking on a common vocabulary. Yes, we are thinking on many different approaches. And One of the things we're going to start doing is broadcasting through the channels and collecting feedback from stake pool operators about everything, and you, the customer, about the delegation experience and so forth. My goal is to get better KPIs and more understandable way of managing the system. The other thing is a lot of these parameters eventually will be user updatable, so you'll be able to vote on them. Everything from the block size to the K parameter for the amount of stake pools, and other things like oversaturation and so forth. So Bitfinex is still testing Cardano integration for like 8 months now. Right? I mean, if they have some problems, they can always call me. I'm here, guys. Be really nice if you'd like to list us. We're here to help. Foundation's here to help. We have Neville is always available. Just call us. Ethereum and Vitalik were recently featured on Vice News. So was John McAfee. Do you think media coverage like this will smother the technical advantages of Cardano? No. It's easy to get vanity media, guys. Very easy. Media doesn't get you anything. You ask yourself, oh, a news story occurred. How does that translate into adoption, price appreciation, or all these other things you all care about? Doesn't. Just gives you visibility. So when you talk to the waitress at the diner, she says, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. But is it actionable? Can you do something with it? The fact that 1 million people know who you are, is that important? You have to think in terms of what is actually going to achieve adoption. And some of the best technologies in the world are techs you know nothing about. TCP/IP. How many people actually talk about it? Go to the diner, talk to the waitress. Does she know about it? Does he know about it? Probably not. But yet every single time they pull out the cell phone to check Facebook, it's there. So it's not about it's not about who knows about it. It's about who's using it and what you can do with it. That's the key. That's much more important. Does anybody know what Plato was sentenced to death for? Was Plato sentenced to death? Socrates was killed. I can't remember if Plato was sentenced to death. You guys remember? Socrates drank the hemlock. Aristotle had to run away too. Only 10% of people approve of TCP/IP. And by the way, it's so easy to game a poll. They once went to college students and said, "Are you concerned about the environmental impacts of dihydrogen monoxide?" College students were like, "Oh man, that sounds terrible. That H2O." Ugh. Charles, did you see the new Star Wars movie? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Rise of Skywalker was basically a 2.5 hour long apology from Disney about screwing up with The Last Jedi. The amount of fan service there was unbelievable. They're like, let's have Han Solo, but he died. I don't care, just throw him in. And Chewie, you get a medal, and we're gonna have Luke raise the X-wing like Yoda did from The Empire Strikes Back. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was an enjoyable movie. The problem was that JJ had an idea of what he wanted to do. He started it with The Force Awakens. It got all screwed up, and he had 2.5 hours to basically fix it. And he did the best he could with what he had. He was given an impossible task as a director. They said, all right, clean up this bad movie, make $1 billion, and keep the Star Wars fans happy. It's like, how do you do that? You have no creative freedom. Oh, and yeah, you have to do all this merchandising for it as well. So, kudos to Disney for doing their best to clean things up. But gotta be honest with you guys, if you want to refresh everything Disney, give us what we want. Give us an R-rated Darth Vader movie and have the guy who did Logan direct it. There you go. It'll be amazing. And have Daniel Day-Lewis play the villain in the Vader movie or something like that. It'll be great. Oh, by the way, spoilers. Sorry. I didn't give too many spoilers. Yeah, I know. I love the Logan movie too. It was basically like a mutant western. They even did a noir black and white version of it, which was quite good. Cinematography is great. It's just magical. I have a still actually in my office. You see the red thing back there from Blade Runner 2049. Danny Villeneuve is one of my favorite directors, and that was such a beautiful movie. It really was. It was so well shot and just so incredibly detailed and layered. Like when you actually looked at things like the mailboxes and the walls, they started with something pristine and they just put layer of graffiti and grime on it as if it had been lived in. And that was intentional. It was just incredible to see how much work they put in. And that's how you make great products, by the way. Everything that's good in life, somebody spent quite a bit of time thinking about the subtleties and the fine details, the things you'd never see. Like the first Apple computers that Steve Jobs created with Wozniak, they actually cared about what it looked like inside the case. No one ever sees that, but they cared about what it looked like inside the case, that level of attention to detail. And it's just so important to do that. That's why we built Cardano. We built it. There's a lot of love in that code. There's a lot of passion that was put. Every detail was argued about in the formal specifications, even the notation that we use. We said, should we use an alpha or this letter, or what should we do? What should the typesetting look like? Yeah, because that's what matters. If you have that level of passion, you care about that, you'll end up building something beautiful and great. Yeah, Rucker Hauer was amazing too. That soliloquy that Rucker Hauer had, the Tears in Rain, he wrote himself. Think about that. An actor writing his own lines and making it like awesome. Yeah, Rogue One was good too. Witcher, a fan? Yeah, actually on the plane while flying back, I watched the entire Netflix Witcher, all 8 episodes. Very well done, Henry Cavill. Thank you so much. the voice was spot on. The glare was spot on. Witcher was very well done. When are you increasing the K factor? I'd like to increase it. It costs me money. Do you take lion's mane or any other interesting supplements? I do take lion's mane. It's a great mushroom. It helps you regenerate neurons. It's shown to increase BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it does a whole bunch of things. There was a case study that they did out of Japan with people with dementia, and after putting them on a 6-week regimen of lion's mane, I think 5 grams per day, which is a quite high dose, it actually noticeably improved their symptoms over the control group. So lion's mane is quite good. And there are other mushrooms that are good for you too, cordyceps and so forth. Mycology in general is an understudied and underappreciated field of science, and it's something that we really need to kind of push our funding levels up for and create new drugs for. Combining lion's mane with aerobic exercise is quite good, along with mindfulness meditation. Paul Stamets. He's awesome. My parents ran into Paul Stamets. He came to Gillette, Wyoming. My dad came down for Christmas, and we were talking, and we talked about mushrooms for a bit. And he said, there's this guy that came, and he was talking about mushrooms, really smart about that. And I said, was it Paul Stamets? He said, I don't know. And I pulled out a picture and said, was it this guy? And he said, yeah. I've been trying to meet Paul for like 10 years. And he just shows up to Gillette, Wyoming, this small town. I didn't even know he was there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Paul Stamets was on the Joe Rogan. He's been on twice, actually. Any bad side effects for lion's bane? None that I'm aware of. That said, talk to your doctor before you do any supplement. Glad to see you so happy, Charles. Anyway, what's your roadmap for losing weight and keeping in shape, respectfully? I got to start traveling less. I have lost over 25 pounds, and I'm glad that the New England Journal of Medicine, I think it was December 26, recently published an article about the benefits of intermittent fasting. Took them damn long enough, but yeah, I do that, and there's a litany of other things I do. I have a team of people I work with. I have a personal trainer and a nutritionist, and it certainly is doing a lot for me, and I look a lot better. I was getting pretty porky there, and thank you, Twitter, for pointing that out. I fast about a week, once a quarter, and I try to do 6 days of exercise every week when I'm home. The problem is the travel. That's what kills me. If I'm in one place, I'd look like Brad Pitt in Fight Club, because why not? Hand gliding is better than a fly suit. You've lost your damn mind, man. Wingsuits are the way to go. And Jarno is the man. He's amazing. I went training with him not too long ago. All right, Charles, have you done skydiving in Brazil? No, not Brazil. I've done many, many other places. And for fasting, it's 16-8. 16 on, the fast, 8 off. Nothing wrong with pork. I agree. Love bacon. Had some bacon this morning. Ketogenic is definitely the best. I agree with you there. And by the way, you can be vegan and ketogenic, you crazy vegan people. Is there any chance the internship industrial placement at Iowa HK? I'm a computer science student. Would love to work with you guys and gain valuable experience for my degree. That's a great question. Depends on who you are, where you're at, where you're doing your internship at. We're currently not hiring interns, but we'll definitely try to open up something for that. And if not us, Emergo is always available. And then, of course, the Cardano Foundation may have something. You should totally try DMT, by the way. Yeah, that's for the Joe Rogan Experience. Gotta love that guy. Have you done DMT? Joe DMT Rogan. Yeah, Fight Club was a great movie. You got to love the Pixies. Where is my mind? Why is Cardano price not increasing? You tell me. Do you have any evidence to support the claim that other projects fear the rise of Cardano? Yeah, of course, by saying bad things about it. Guys, if the people running those projects take the time to criticize us, it's a good indicator they're really scared of us, especially Tezos and others. Why would you criticize someone who's not a threat? It's a waste of time, effort, money, and energy. You just say, yeah, let them be that. They focus on your other things. We don't spend a lot of time talking about projects unless those projects have good technology or an interesting thing. Like I really like Algorand, and I was interested in Dash's treasury model, and I like the adoption that Bitcoin Cash is pushing for merchants and things like that. So we talk about them in that respect. Or that those projects are doing something I consider to be unsustainable or unethical and has existential consequences for our entire ecosystem. For example, Tezos' failings with their foundation caused a lot of problems for everybody who had a Swiss foundation. Whether they choose to admit this or not, it made FINMA and ESA and everybody else very, very uncomfortable, and it set everything back by about a year to 2 years in Switzerland from a regulatory perspective. And Cardano has a Swiss foundation. So they piss in the pool. I have to live in that same pool. So of course I'm going to say something about it. They spent a lot of time, effort, money to clean it up. For EOS, they did a $4 billion ICO. And it was a mar on our entire industry and a symbol of the excesses of our industry. So of course we're going to say something about that. But that wasn't because I want to take customers from EOS or Tezos. Who cares? There's plenty of people to build on our platform. We don't need to take a single one of their customers. Good riddance and goodwill. There's good things to learn everywhere. But when these other projects attack me or attack Cardano in particular, it's because they're terrified of us. At the end of the day, we're chugging away. And if we get everything right, we create basically a perpetual engine that gets bigger and stronger and self-funds its development. And it'll wake up one day and have 1 billion users. And frankly, there's no way they can compete with us. They don't have the scientists. They don't have the peer review capabilities. They can't write code like we write code. And they also don't have the level of passion, excitement, and enthusiasm that our communities have, and the loyalty that our community has. So if we're successful, they're done. It's not the other way around, though. What do you think about Vitalik meeting Putin? I'm an American, man. I stay out of sanctioned countries, and I stay out of countries America doesn't like. You don't take positions on these things. You just deal with the consequences of them, and then you try through the ballot box and political means to change things. But just because I disagree with something doesn't mean I'll break the law or evade a sanction. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and that's not a hill I want to die on. I'd rather be here and change things through technology and economics. Much more effective. And Vitalik is not Russian. He's Canadian of Russian descent. I believe he was born in Russia, but grew up in Canada. And he does speak a little bit of Russian, but his Russian's terrible. Did you expand your farm with any more animals? This year we got mini donkeys. Well, last year we got mini donkeys. This year we're going to get some alpacas. So 4 alpacas on the way. Might get some yaks too. And I want camels. I used to have a dromedary camel, but I want backring camels. They're much better for Colorado. And they might actually bring the woolly mammoth back. I had a great conversation with somebody about what would be required to do that. And he specializes in genetics and biology and all that synthetic biology and CRISPR stuff. And I'd say probably this decade, we'll see the de-extinction of at least one animal, probably the woolly mammoth, because they have enough DNA to do that and a viable path to bring them back. And frankly, they'd be perfect for Montana and Canada and other places. You shave them during the summer and you let them shag up during the winter time, and they just kind of free range and roam around. That's my retirement plan, be a mammoth herder in Montana. When camel, yeah. Come on, guys, give me a good one. I support the Mammoth Initiative. Well, thank you, sir. Yak butter tea. Butter tea is amazing. Actually, turned me on to bulletproof coffee. Yeah, you've been to Nepal. Is Haskell a good first programming language to learn? Well, if you're going to do that, then buy this book. Programming in Haskell from Graham Hutton. It's a very good starting book to learn about Haskell and the magic of Haskell and all the cool things you can do with Haskell and so forth. But I wouldn't recommend it. I'd frankly recommend JavaScript or Python because the pedagogy is just so involved. It's so good. Do you skydive? Yes. Oh, if you're going to start drinking bulletproof coffee, then I'd recommend taking a digestive enzyme, especially something with bile salts. Your body is not used to processing that much fat at once, and if you have any problems with bile or your gallbladder, you're going to have a lot of indigestion and taste a lot of vomit in your mouth. So take some sort of digestive enzyme while you drink the bulletproof coffee. It makes it go down much easier. Charles, you should buy your own float tank. I am when the event barn gets refurbished. Right now, I use Isolate. It's a flotation center in Boulder. Stallone or Arnold? Who you got? 1980s, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Today, Stallone. I know you respect the Zero Crash project. Do you have any insights into the BAT project? Yes, Brendan Ick does a great job. He's a very surly guy. He's fun to argue with over Twitter. And I've run into him every now and then, but I have a lot of respect for Brendan and his work. And, BATS is an example of a good product, a very good product. You have a very clear focus and scope of what you want to do. You know how to grow it. You know why people are going to use it. You have a niche that clearly has a need and no one's satisfying that. And you're pragmatic. So you built it on Chromium. So solid platform. Google's taking care for him. He does what he needs to do. User growth, user growth, user growth, user growth. And it has a sustainable economic model. And should it be successful, it will completely revolutionize ads. BATS is a good idea. And this is a great example of what should be done in our space. Steam was actually a pretty good idea. It just didn't have an incentive for the buy side. Had it had that, it'd been a huge project. Dan Larimer special, good idea mixed with a bad idea, can't differentiate between the two, value leaks out, ban, and the project goes somewhere else. If you ever figure out how to do a holistic thing like BATS, it'll be here to stay, and Brave will be here to stay. And I'm very glad that they're around, and I have a lot of respect for Brendan and his team. Mm-hmm. Yeah, any ideas to accept an invitation to a North Korean conference on crypto? It's so funny because I remember when I got that invitation. For those of you who didn't hear this story, this guy named Jose, I think Jose Valam, or whatever the fuck his name is, just some useful idiot shill who's I think originally from Spain, but now is a propagandist for North Korea, invited a litany of people, including me, to come to North Korea for a conference. And I told him to go fuck himself. I think I actually used that exact phrase, and followed by a lot of nasty language about how evil that government is. And of course, he said, "Oh, you've just been propagandized by the West," and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So anyway, when I heard that Virgil was going, I said, if you're going to go, you're probably going to go to jail. You're a U.S. citizen. And he said, no one cares, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, all right, I'll ask the State Department. I think he did. And they said no, and he still went. And now he's in jail. I guess he's going to be released to Alabama under custody of his parents or something like that. Sanctions are no joke. Just going back to an example I used last time I talked about this, we have a great Iranian community for Cardano, and they're very smart, and mostly because Iran has a great academic tradition, and they look at the white papers. There's academics there, the cryptographers there. They read our papers, which are publicly available over the internet, and they say, wow, this stuff is really interesting. And all the time I get invitations to come and speak. I won't go until the regime changes or the U.S. government gets a good relationship with Iran. I'd love to. I'd love to have a good relationship because this is an open, free society. I'd love to work with everybody. Unfortunately, you have to live within the constraints of society and reality and the geopolitical realities of your time. In the 1940s, if you were Jewish, you probably didn't go to Germany, especially in the first half of that decade. Just plenty of great universities, plenty of stuff happening, not welcome. If you're a capitalist and you're tight with the U.S. government, probably didn't go to Stalin's Russia. You probably didn't go to the Soviet Union unless you're Bernie Sanders for your anniversary. But anyway, there's just certain places you can't go and certain people you can't talk to. It's sad that we live in a society and a reality that is that way, but it's just something we're going to have to work our way through. And that's the point of this technology, is to try to harmonize the world and make the world more interdependent, bring people together and set aside petty rivalries and set aside the past and make people realize that we can accomplish so much more with peace and trade and freedom that we can accomplish with silos and barriers and walls between each other. And I hope my life's work can create a world that's a little closer to the former than the latter. Over 100, Bjorn. Come on, one more. Come on. Right here, what do you think of Max Kaiser's theory that China has 20,000 tons of gold? Guys, gold doesn't create value out of thin air. People do. Yeah, just think as a thought experiment. This is a great way to end this podcast. As a thought experiment, imagine if you were marooned on the island of diamonds and gold. So everywhere you look, there's bars of gold, nuggets of gold, cities of gold, and diamonds. Like so big you can just have in your hand, like Captain Kirk when he fought the Gorn lizard creature. So these big diamonds, big gold all around, but no food or water. Is that a good situation to be in? You see, things have value because we as a society decide to value them and not the other way around. There's no notion of intrinsic value where things just magically value, it produces value, okay? So I would much rather live in an economy where I have economic freedom, I have lots of entrepreneurs doing interesting, exciting things all the time, where we have great education, where we have technological innovation occurring, and we have real products that are useful to people. And when you have idea flow and freedom of expression and a stable economy with rule of law that respects people, that has so much more wealth and capacity than an economy that has 20,000 tons of gold sitting aside. Just look at Spain compared to the Netherlands during the after the discovery of the New World. They get all this silver out of Chorricho and all these other places, and they have huge amounts of silver. In fact, it created silver inflation. The value of silver plummeted throughout all of Europe. Meanwhile, the people who actually had much better functioning capitalistic societies, like the Netherlands, thrived, created giant corporations. They did quite well. So we're way ahead of China in many respects. And if you had to bet which country is going to be the predominant country, like the which century is going to belong to which country, I'd say the 21st century is still an American century. The reason being is we're the world leader in ICT. We're the world leader in nanotechnology. We're the world leader in creative endeavors for the creation of content, curation of content. We're the world leader in scientific research and the application of scientific research. We still have the best entrepreneurs, the whole private space industry here. And even when we're behind, like with rocket engines, we can easily catch up. Like what SpaceX did. We're now the world's #1 producer of rocket engines. We weren't even in the top 10 before SpaceX came in. So these are the factors that make great economies. And as long as they're set up in a way that when wealth is created, the wealth trickles through and a large group of people benefit from that instead of one or two people at the top, the economy is sustainable and it does well. We have many world challenges, like global warming is a great example of that can be solved through innovation. You just take these carbon scrubbers, like what carbon engineering is developing, and you pair it with fourth generation nuclear power, and you pair that with a way of recycling nuclear fuel so it has a very short half-life. Those three things together could create a sustainable way of eliminating all the excess carbon, and we end global warming. You'd only have to build somewhere between 500 to 1,000 fourth generation nuclear power plants with carbon scrubbers to be able to take all the excess carbon out of the atmosphere that we're putting in through the fossil fuel industry. Now, how much would that cost to solve? Slap a $50 billion a year carbon tax, you'd have it solved in 20 years. You don't need Greta. You don't need a global government. That's really just an excuse to create a one world government. You don't need any of that stuff. You don't need to control people. You can solve it through innovation. And we, the American entrepreneurs, are the ones who usually lead the way here. So who cares about who's stockpiling gold? Who cares about these natural resource wars, these other things? We'll innovate our way out of it. And as long as you have the right conditions, you can always innovate. You can always produce interesting things. Worst case scenario, we can go tether an asteroid that's solid gold and go mine the damn thing and bring it back home if we care about gold that much. But gold is not going to be the king of the 21st century. Probably helium-3 will. Anyway, so until next time, my friends, fun as always. We went through many serpentine paths, but coming back home, Cardano's prospects look very solid. Happy birthday, Bitcoin. This decade is going to be the most magical decade in the human race history. And we're going to see wonders and horrors we've never imagined. And I look forward to living it with you. And thank you all for helping make Cardano already a great success. And here's to Cardano by the end of the decade being the #1 cryptocurrency. Cheers.